Today we're talking with Disney artist and creative director Dave Pacheco, whose work spans animation, publishing, collectibles, and restoration, including work on The Little Mermaid and the reconstruction of lost Snow White material. Welcome, Dave. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your role at Disney?
Oh, which one? I actually wear many hats here at the company. Let me just give you kind of a brief history of my career. I started in 1980. I've been here for almost 27 years. And I started out in animation, feature animation for 9 years, worked on Fox and the Hound and animated Ariels and Little Mermaid and Roger Rabbit, and worked on several television shows and some live action films, as well as animation for the theme parks. And then went over to Disney Publishing, came in as senior artist, and then ended up as the creative director there. And so after 6.5 years of publishing, I went over to Disney Art Editions, which is the collectible division full-time. And I left the management position and went over for a full-time creative. And then about 2 years ago, went over to the Disney Home division. And now I work as the creative director for Disney Home products. And I worked on projects like the Walt Disney Signature Collection of furniture and various other projects like the Disney US postage stamps, which has been a lot of fun for me. And continue working with pretty much about half of the lines of business here within the company, whether it's feature animation, still publishing, archived, whatever. It's like I'm kind of all over the place here.
Disney is such a large corporation with the theme parks and the merchandising and the animated films. Can you clarify for us exactly which portions of Disney you interact with?
I work specifically within the Disney Consumer Products division. Although I do interact with theme parks, I do character design and product design for the theme parks. I do a lot of signings at the theme parks. A lot of the product that I worked on is sold at the theme parks or was created specifically for the theme parks. I do work along with feature animation, making sure that I understand what is the most current in terms of the character design and what are the current properties they're working on. I work with publishing. So, again, I work pretty much all over this company in a creative aspect. I kind of separate myself from any of the marketing or budgetary or financial side of the company because that is really, honestly, not my expertise. And my time is better spent doing what I do best and leaving the finances to those who know it better than I do. So leave it to those who do it best and let me do what I do best. But again, I am all over this place.
What drove you to want to work for Disney?
That was something that I knew that I was going to do when I was a little kid. My father really liked the Disney films, and my sister and I think were his excuse to go watch the films himself in the theaters. So he would take us to go watch the films when they would come out, and then he would take us to Disneyland, and he would buy us books and the little figurines and so forth. And I actually had a crush on Snow White. I mean, I thought she was just this actually living, breathing person. I thought she was absolutely gorgeous. And then kind of equated her with my first grade teacher. I just thought that my teacher was Snow White. She was just so gorgeous. And then my father explained, well, you know what? She's really painted. And like when I understood the concept, when my father explained animation to me, then I thought, this is absolutely phenomenal that you can do a series of drawings, make them move, make them live, make them dance, make them breathe, make them cry, whatever. And that concept was just so amazing to me. And I just said, well, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to make cartoons for Walt Disney. And same thing with the figurines, when my father would take into Disneyland and find me the little cheap figurines at Disneyland, and they're rather cheaply painted, and I would repaint the figurines because I know the eyes weren't in a proper place, so the colors weren't right as I remembered them. And I said, well, when I work for Disney, I'm going to make a line of figurines. And the same thing with my book. At the time, I didn't understand creative interpretation, so I would very often repaint the illustrations in my books to make them closer to what I remembered in the films. And same thing with my comic books. And my father used to get so mad at me that, these are expensive and you're ruining your stuff, So I was like, no, I'm making them better. So when I work for Disney, I will also illustrate books. And these are the exact 3 things that I have done. I have worked in animation, I work in publishing, and I've created the line of figurines, which has gone on for 17 years now and is highly successful. So I'm kind of living my own dream. But this was just something that I knew that I was going to do ever since I was a little kid, probably about 4 years old.
Did you find it difficult to break into Disney given that it's the goal for so many animators?
For me, timing had a lot to do with it. Before I came to Disney, I was working at Hanna-Barbera, working on Flintstone and Scooby-Doo and Super Friends, which for whatever reason really impresses a lot of the younger people here that I actually worked on Super Friends. But everybody's goal at Hanna-Barbera or in other animation studios was always to come to Disney because Disney was the ultimate. It was the pinnacle of the industry. And again, this was a dream of mine that I had when I was a child. And I just really didn't have the self-confidence at the time to go and apply. But there was one particular day I was working on a project, and for whatever reason, I don't even remember, but I had an argument with my director. And it obviously got to a point where I had to argue with somebody because I tried not to be that confrontational with anybody. But I thought, you know what? Let me just walk out of here and go see what happens. And I said, well, I'm going to go to Disney. She goes, all right, go ahead. And I thought, well, I think I just quit. And I went to the parking lot. I had my portfolio with me and I dropped it off at the studio gate. They wouldn't let me in because I had no appointment and there was no one there that I could see. And I just said, I'd like to drop off my portfolio and see if I can get a job here. And it turns out that they forwarded my portfolio, but my drawing style was very similar to one of the older artists, Freddie Moore, who happened to be the favorite animator of the head of the feature animation department. So when he saw my portfolio, he was like, oh my God, this guy got by Freddie Moore. Get him in. So basically, I left my portfolio off on Friday, and on Monday they called me and asked if I wanted to come in for a job. And it was that simple. And it was just on the timing.
How has the advent of CGI changed animation as a business and a career?
Fortunately, with John Lasseter coming in, they are bringing traditional animation back. And that's very good news for a lot of the artists that have been out of work for some time and have gone on to other studios, because a lot of them have their heart here at Disney. But I think that CGI and the computer itself has made things very facile for a lot of lines of business within the company, whether it is feature animation, it makes it a lot faster. Traditional animation is about maybe 3 times as expensive as computer animation, and it takes a little bit longer. We do a lot of our design work on computer here. The one thing that I stress to the newer artists to come in, I ask them, okay, so I see that you can work on a computer in Photoshop and Painter or what have you, but what do you draw with? Do you paint? Do you draw? Do you sculpt? And a lot of them surprisingly say, no, I don't. And they're actually very afraid of actually painting a pencil. The good thing about the computer is that when you render something or you create a design, if you don't like the color, it is changed to the seconds. Or if you make a mistake, it's done in 1 second. Whereas traditionally, maybe you have to start over. And there's a satisfaction that you get between both mediums. But I really like to stress to the younger artists that every once in a while, just go back to the basics. Learn to go back to drawing that bowl of fruit with the light on either side of it. And remember where your core lighting is. Remember your basic structures. Remember basic construction and what you always learned in Art 101. And you really kind of need to get back to basics. So I'm still a traditionalist at heart, but I really do enjoy working on the computer because one thing for me, it's so fast. And my timing is usually very, very near and dear to me. So I have to get things done a lot faster than I normally would have, or at least a few years ago.
In a similar vein, you had some advice there for up-and-coming artists. For the younger audience, maybe high school age, who want to get into animation, what kind of path would you suggest? What kind of focus and what kind of education do you think they should get to hopefully have a career in animation?
Well, for one thing, they should really understand the computer aspects of animation, and not just animation, but also Painter and Photoshop or whatever other creative programs that they have in terms of computer work. Then they can go ahead and make a decision whether or not they want to be in animation or whether they want to be in background painting. You come in, and as long as you have a basic knowledge of the overall, then you can decide after a while which department, as it were, that you want to go into, whether it's line drawing or the color aspects or color mixing or TGI. I think that you definitely need a strong life drawing background, action analysis, anatomy. You need to understand how animals are built and how they move. And acting classes are good too, because basically an animator is an actor with a pencil and you put down a performance on paper. So if you don't understand what the character is doing in your own persona, you can't really convey that performance on the paper. And the other thing is, try not to get too frustrated. I know it's difficult to come in right out of school and be put in a professional atmosphere. And a lot of artists, they feel that, oh, I'm not learning fast enough and I keep making the same mistakes and I'm not learning. I think, you know what? You really are learning. This is what you do. You do your drawings, you do your design, and you take it to the best point that you can where you, in your own mind, think it's completed. Make a copy and put those copies away. Keep a little file going. And 6 months from now, take a look at that artwork and you should be able to see that artwork and say, what was I thinking? Why did I turn that in? Look at the arms, look at the eyes, look at the pose, look at the gesture, look at the color. What was it thinking? Then you will know that you have learned. And it's like the light bulb goes on and they get very excited about it. So then they realize and they go back and look at their own artwork. It's like, oh my God, you're right. So trying to be calm about what you do, just kind of going with the flow. I think that's what kept me here for the longest time, just being open to new things and don't take critique personally, because ultimately the artwork that we're doing, the product designs that we're not doing, is not about David Pacheco as an artist. It's not about Disney as a company. And what it is it's the end result. It's the quality and the design of the product, whether it's a film or a book or a sculpture. It's always about the end product and how well it is accepted by the consumer. So that's my bit of advice to the new ones.
You've written quite a few how to draw books, so I can tell that you're really interested in making sure that continues down to the generations.
Yes. I think I'm kind of considered one of the old guard now. I really try to stress the aspects of the history of the company and the legacy, because I think that of all the studios in Hollywood history, the Disney Studios is probably the richest legacy ever. And then maybe with MGM coming seconds, with films like The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. But there's just something about this company, the Disney company, that is just everybody knows and everybody loves.
Have you always had just an immense natural talent with art to be able to draw so accurately at such a young age?
Artistic ability runs in my family on my father's side, but I was the only one to actually do anything with it, to make it a full-time career. And despite the fact that I've been with Disney for close to 27 years, every single day I'm learning something new. When I helped to create the line of figurines, I had no idea about what comprised creating a figurine, sculpting, let alone the porcelain industry. So I learned. So it's like you learn quickly, and it's a challenge for me. I look at this more of a challenge every single day. And every single day I come in and I learn something, whether it's about color or line work, or whether I'm looking at my coworkers, what they're working on, and they're an inspiration to me. I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to be learning from you as well. So it's a real give and take. But I just love being in this creative atmosphere. It's fantastic.
And with you having worked on such classics as Little Mermaid, Black Cauldron, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, what for you, out of the projects you've worked on, do you consider a personal high point?
Oh, there are several, and they kind of, again, all across the board. I think the biggest honor that I had was being asked to design the 16 U.S. postage stamps, the Disney ones that have been out for the past few years. And strangely enough, is when I was asked to design these and to do the art direction on them, to me, at first it was like, okay, here's a meeting. I have to attend it. What is it you want? You want me to do stamps? Okay, great. What is my format? What are my characters? What is my design? What do I do? Okay, fine, great. A week later, I was sitting at my desk working on the concepts, and all of a sudden it just hit me. I am designing U.S. postage stamps. And it was a whole week until I realized that, wow, this is absolutely great.
Your stamps have outsold Elvis, haven't they?
They have. And that was something that I found out a few months ago, that I could not believe, that of all the stamp sets, and this is not just individual sets, this is a stamp set, of all the stamp sets in all U.S. postage history, the Disney stamp sets have sold more than any stamp sets ever. We're sold over $163 million in sales, and Elvis sets are at 124. I couldn't believe it when I heard it. It's like, wow, great. How fantastic is that? This is part of what my little legacy that I'm leaving behind, that I was part of this. These are my illustrations based on my drawings and on my art direction, so I'm so proud of that. Very, very proud of that. That is probably the biggest honor. I think probably my favorite project that I have worked on is the reconstruction of the mission sequences from Snow White. This was to the 50th anniversary. And Snow White was the very first film that I ever saw. And it made such an impact on me that I even remembered where I was sitting in the theater, what I was wearing, and how frightened I was, at some of the sequences. And for the 50th anniversary, I was given carte blanche to go to the studio and basically find what there was to find on Snow White. And some of the artwork I actually found at the bottom of an elevator shaft. There was a dumbwaiter that led down to the basement. Then there were all these drawings that were covered with oil, and they were, in their folders, and they were of the Seven Dwarfs, but they had no indication as to where in Snow White they were. And I knew that they were actually not used in the final film. So I was able to locate probably the last script that there was, the most complete script on the film. And I kind of sorted out the dwarf drawings, put all the Docs with Doc and Grumpy with Grumpy and so forth. And I took all the dialogue, for example, of Grumpy, and I would take the drawings and flip them and I would look at the line of dialogue and I would mouth the dialogue and I would literally read the character's lips as the drawings were flipping in front of me. And that's where I was able to reconstruct the sequence and find out exactly where those drawings fit into the whole thing. And it was 6 months of work. And this was kind of a Disney legend, kind of Disney lore that people had heard about, but nobody had ever seen and nobody knew where it existed. And I was able to reconstruct it. And it was shown at the Disneyana convention taken back in 1987, and then it was put together for a television show for the 50th anniversary of Snow White, and then has been in all the DVDs and the Laserdiscs as supplemental material. And that was a fantastic project because I was really digging back into the old days.
So Snow White's still your favorite character?
It's my favorite film, and my favorite character is Grumpy, because that is still me in the mornings. I am not a morning person at all. When I come in and I see my agenda for the day and I've got meeting 8:30 or 9 o'clock, I'm like, okay, I'll go. And I put on my Disney face and I go to the meetings, go inside. I'm like eating because I want to be asleep. I'm not awake yet. That is so me.
And kind of turning to look at your current position of collectible design, how involved have you been with the creation of the new character statues coming out from companies like Master Replicas?
Pretty much from the beginning. I have a few of the originals at my home in my collection, but when I had the opportunity to go ahead and design these, and I was kind of given carte blanche as to what I wanted to see, and it's like, well, okay, if I'm going to design something, I'm going to design it for myself. That's kind of the little perk that I have. So, also always keep it in mind what is going to sell. Again, artwork and creativity is very subjective. I mean, there are things that I like that you may not like. Same thing with all these poses. I can go ahead and do storytelling, and maybe it might not be a favorite moment of mine from the film, but it makes a great sculpture. So I've kind of got to go around with what I want and what I know that would work better for a product design. So it's kind of a fun challenge that I have. We're adding some puffing elements that haven't been added on before. For example, the Jimmy Cricket has a metallic badge, is an actual metal badge, as opposed to being completely done in resin. And the Tinkerbell, I believe, is probably the first sculpture of the large sculpture of Tinkerbell, which was sculpted where she's actually suspended, because usually she has to be attached to something. So we had her suspended on a line of pixie dust. And again, that's kind of a memory of mine watching the Sunday shows, at the Disney shows, and then all of a sudden there go the fireworks and there's the castle and Tinkerbell comes out. And to me, that was an hour of my time, that I was just going to just thoroughly enjoy. That's why I chose that particular image of Tinkerbell coming out of the television as opposed to something to do with Peter Pan, the film. So that was kind of a little selfish thing on my part. There's a little bit more life to these and a little bit more of the extra stuff that we kind of like to see.
What are some of the challenges of taking these animated characters and making them into three-dimensional statues and art forms?
The most difficult thing, especially for a sculptor that's not familiar with Disney, is how do you interpret the two-dimensional drawing into an actual 3D sculpture? But most importantly, how do you maintain the integrity and the personality and the appeal of the character? And that's where I come in. And I work very closely with them. I'll do my original concept, and I'll do a final version of that, and I'll do a quick color comp. But then, in addition, I will also do turnaround drawings. So you'll see the character from straight on, left and right side, back, even the top drawing, so that they can kind of get an idea of what they want. Then I will go and work with the sculptors and see a very, very, very basic application of the clay shaped over the armature. They build a wire armature, then they put the clay around it. And I'll say, let's tweak the arm about, let's bring this down, let's twist the body, watch the flow, the movement with the body. Now let's think about the expression. For example, when we did Donald, the sculptor had Donald has his arms crossed, and the sculptor originally had Donald's arms sculpted in such a way that I said, this is a really good sculpture. You always want to be positive when you're working with creatives, because we're very sensitive people. But he had a really great sculpture, but the thing is, the way Donald's hands were, it looked as if Donald was cold, and it looks like he was trying to warming himself up, so he's holding his arms close to him. And he said, but Donald is actually very frustrated. So if you just bend the wrists in a little bit more, then it will look like he's angry. And you can just see the difference. And what I do is I act it out for the sculptors and for the artists. And this is the difference between this getting cold, and if the hands come in, now he's angry. And it's just a simple little movement like that can make or break the personality of the piece. So that's where I come in. And sometimes I can be really hard-nosed about that. Keep it going, keep pushing. Give us the best that you can.
As a sculptor yourself, you find yourself being more critical of sculpts?
That's pretty much with everything that I do. in my capacity now, I really don't have the opportunity to draw or sculpt or paint like I used to. And when I get home, I don't want to pick up a pencil or a brush. I kind of oversee what everybody else is. But what is fun to me is that I get the satisfaction out of drawing or sculpting through their work. And sometimes it gets to a point where, in what let me do it, I can do it a lot faster because sometimes they may not understand what I'm trying to bring across in terms of a description of an expression or a pose. So sometimes it's just a lot easier if I just take the clay and the sculpting tools and do it myself, and I can do it just in a few minutes as opposed to having to stand there and explain or draw it out. That's kind of where I get my kicks, but I'm highly critical. And whether or not I have a particular experience in that particular medium, because it is a Disney character, I am very protective and feel very responsible for the way these characters come out. Yeah, a lot of my sculptors and character artists say, you know what, you're just being too picky. It's like, you know what, it's not about me. It's about what the final artwork looks like. See, the thing is, with an animation drawing, your drawing is one of 24, and that 24 is part of a movement. The 24 drawings in 1 second, and your one drawing is part of an overall movement or expression. With a product design, whether it's a book illustration or sculpture, we only have one chance to bring across that emotion or that story point. And the viewer has to be able to look at whatever it is and say, oh, how great that is. Look, I can tell exactly what they're doing. Or look at the expression, look at the pose, and I like that pose, whether it's a villain or a Thumper or Jiminy Cricket or Tinkerbell, whatever that character is doing in the illustration or the product, that is what is going to make the customer buy it. So that's why I'm constantly pushing that the characters always have to look exactly as they did in the film.
Now, you yourself are a little bit of a collector, aren't you?
Yeah, I kind of upset about things, and I have to have like everything that there was ever created about whatever it is, whether it's a Disney item like Disney Kins or cocktail shakers, I just kind of go through these obsessions. But yes, I am a collector. I was working on trying to get all of the Good Housekeeping pages, the Disney Good Housekeeping pages from 1934 to 1944, and trying to utilize that artwork and kind of repurpose it into other product. But I wanted to have every single issue of Good Housekeeping. I got them all within about 5 months. So the collection is now complete. But yes, I do collect quite a bit. But I'm very selective about what I collect, especially in terms of Disney. I have animation art, but it's not just for the sake of collecting. It's got to appeal to me in terms of its aesthetic, the way it looks and the way it moves me. Any Disney product, and my house is not full of Disney at all. I'm picking up a house right now, restoring a historic landmark. And when I have my studio, then I will have a certain area in the studio. It will have some of the Disney collectibles that I have. But the one thing that I don't like is they have everything out at the same time. I love the idea of rotating the exhibits. That way I don't get tired of always seeing the same thing. And then I can go back into the attic and say, wow, look, I forgot about this. Let's put this one out. Let's put this one away because it's been out already for 2 weeks. So I love to switch things around.
What are some of your favorite pieces of your collection?
Oh, it has some wonderful animation art. They have the pieces of Snow White animation art, with backgrounds and a lot of the concept art. I have the Mary Blair pieces from Alice in Wonderland that are just treasures of mine. My favorite piece of animation art that I have is a cell of the Blue Fairy from Pinocchio. Not only is she an absolutely beautifully drawn character, but the inking on the cell is just so exquisite. But in addition to the inking and the coloration that they had on the particular character, there are special effects. There's airbrush around the wand that she's holding, and on her hair, there's a dry brush, but not just one color. It looked like 2 layers of yellow for her hair to make it shimmer a little bit more. There's a light blush on her cheek, and on her wings, there's all this stipple, and it's white and pink and blue, so that as she moves, the wings constantly shimmered. It's just amazing that they took time to do all this incredible work on these cells that you only saw for a second. But it's just amazing to me, and that is my most proud collectibles that I have.
And how do you display these original animation cells?
They're framed up on some walls, usually in rooms that I don't go into for a long time, because again, I don't like to get tired of the same pieces of art. And when I do, I just switch them out with something else. Again, rotating an exhibit.
Well, David, thank you very much for taking some time out to talk with us. We really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.